Women's college basketball is kicking off. Here are the preseason All-American players to watch for.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, hey everyone, Clea Butler here. Joined alongside me is my co-host, Sophia Jones. We've got plenty to go over today. As usual, we're going to go over some preseason All-American watch lists coming from the AP NCAA championship odds. Can UConn do it again? As well as players to watch in the WNBA Free Agency, because it's going to get crazy. And we know that the season just ended, but they're already getting prepped for next season. But first, let's start with the preseason All-American players to watch. Some of college women's games most anticipated players for the season have been named in the preseason All-American roster. A couple to note: Hannah Hidalgo from Notre Dame, Olivia Miles, who just transferred to TCU from Notre Dame, UConn Sarah Strong, UCLA's Lauren Betts. Just to go over those really quickly: Hannah Hidalgo, obviously a standout, is already a two-time AP first team All-American and was ACC player and defensive player of the year. Sophia, what have been your thoughts of what you've seen from Hannah's game?
She has such a complete game. I think one of the best two-way players in the country. I mean, when you see that first team and also defensive, that gives you an indication right there. But watching her on-ball defense, especially as a guard playing out on the perimeter, I I was a guard as well, so I'm a little biased when people can defend out there and stay with their man. And she is so tenacious, and I think that tenacity carries so much on both ends of the floor that you really see. And I would also say for Notre Dame as a squad in general, I mean, they're losing Olivia Miles. They lost Sonia Citron this past season to the WNBA. They're gonna have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and I think Hannah Hidalgo is gonna bear a lot of that chip. And kind of with a little bit of an underwhelming season, you could say last year, that's something that I think she and that whole squad is gonna want to really just put behind them and get some wins this year.
I agree with you. Hidalgo is a very fiery player. And as you mentioned, Notre Dame losing some key scoring threats for that roster. So curious to see what her offensive production is going to look like this season. And, speaking of somebody that had left, Olivia Miles, she's known for her passing ability, court vision, and she's overall improved her scoring. And so she's also going to be a top player that we look to, especially going into the transfer portal. And I don't think many anticipated for her to go to TCU. Many maybe didn't anticipate for her to transfer in general until we got to the back end of Notre Dame's season. But very curious to see how they will utilize Olivia Miles at TCU, because, we saw a Haley Van Lith leave her programs, obviously leaving Louisville, going to LSU, and having the most success at TCU, playing similar positions, similar sizes, a little bit of a similar game to some extent. Olivia Miles, I think, maybe is a little bit more well-rounded at this time, but still, looking to get back after she was bouncing back after injury and everything. Obviously had a fantastic season, but very curious to see what this TCU team will look like with her kind of at the helm of it.
100%. And I'm glad that you brought up some of those injuries. Sometimes just a new change of scenery can really boost someone's morale, like an Olivia Miles, where everything's new, everything's fresh, and I can 100% bet she's going to be ready to kill it this year. That TCU system, they really are on a just exponential growth. And with her at the helm, right off of Haley Van Lith, I think she could even take that program to even more heights, because they were a really fun team to watch last season. They play with a lot of passion. They love their coach. So I think that can carry over.
We spoke about Sarah Strong yesterday, obviously rising sophomore. has proved to literally do everything: scoring, rebounding, playmaking. Another one to look out for. But somebody we haven't mentioned just yet is Lauren Betts, who won the Lisa Leslie Award for Best Center. Obviously, her size is her best value to her. Has really strong rim protection, rebounding, and inside scoring. When you think of one of those traditional centers, I think Lauren Betts is one of those. But you see each year, the centers that we're seeing in women's basketball are getting more and more athletic. I believe her footwork has improved, and I'm curious to see what that will look like this season as well. But what are your thoughts on Lauren Betts and what you've seen with her at UCLA as a whole?
That entire team is pretty much centered around her and what she can do inside the paint, because it's truly special to watch. There's, I don't think, a single college player that has really stopped her, honestly. But she was AP first team All-American last season, and a little bit similarly to Notre Dame, but I think potentially even more, UCLA. They were the number 1 seed for a lot of the season. They get to the Final Four, and then they get beat by UConn. So that is another one of those letdown seasons. And with Lauren Betts entering her last college year, I think that's something that she's going to want to end with the Natty. So I could 100% think that she'll have that motivation behind her game to want to go ahead and get that All-American status again.
Yeah, you bring up great points too. The first one was something that I was also going to say. UCLA's identity, especially offensively, was surrounded just what Lauren Betts could do. So her production is obviously going to be very important, but you also want to make sure that, she has a strong core around her that can support her with that. And as you mentioned, UCLA was a number 1 seed for a majority of the season, and obviously had a great run just in the tournament as well. So I believe that they're going to have another really good run this year. And, even if they don't make it as far in the tournament, Lauren Betts is still going to be an All-American status, especially, I feel like when players, you're going into their senior year, we talked about even Olivia Miles, Hannah Hidalgo having a chip on their shoulder at Notre Dame. I think Lauren Betts is going to come in with the same energy. And another player that I want to mention that, coming from more of like a mid-major program, but still had a fantastic team is Michaela Blakes, who was recognized as a top freshman, incredible scoring numbers last season, and had some international experience as well. AP third team All-American last season. Truly, I think that's largely just because she's at Vanderbilt and not another program. But she had one of her top scoring games last season was 55 points in an overtime win over Auburn. And everybody knew her name at that point. Like, we already saw, and leading up to it, she still had like 40-point games, 30-point games. It's just like, boom. And you think she can't top that. She has a 55-point game. I'm curious to know your thoughts, though. Like, do you think that her being at Vanderbilt, as compared to some of these top programs, and we're looking at, the UCLAs, the Notre Dames, do you think that kind of inhibits her from getting the status and recognition that she maybe deserves a little bit more?
There definitely is that argument to be made because, again, Vanderbilt, they're going up against so many tough SEC opponents. So their record doesn't necessarily reflect some of the talent that they have. But on the flip side, if you look at a player like Michaela Blakes, she's going up against that talent every single given night or whatever their schedule is, twice a week. It probably is. But it's a really good litmus test to see where she stands against some of the other top talents in the entire NCAA, because the SEC is loaded. It's loaded in every single sport, but women's basketball, they have some hoopers.
Absolutely. And you bring up such a good point too, that, she's at Vanderbilt. Maybe their program doesn't seem as strong as compared to some of these SEC schools, but she's still putting up 55 points against them. So she is not one to mess with. But after this, we're going to talk about women's basketball, NCAA title odds. Again, we're focusing on college. The college season is here. I can smell it in the air. We'll talk about it right after this. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get 300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if your bet hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love FanDuel because it gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. So, what are you waiting for? Visit fanduel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Okay, so some title odds. Again, I just love bringing up these things super early just because this is what people love to talk about. We haven't seen any games yet. We're not sure. We're basing everything off of last season and, the expectations and possibilities of this season. Obviously, we know UConn is the reigning national champion under Paige Bueckers, who is obviously now in the WNBA, but we can't forget about Sarah Strong and AZ Fudd. But they were also going up against South Carolina and Dawn Staley, them losing Chloe Kitts. There's some different factors that we are going to see this season, but there's still a lot of high hopes for South Carolina and Connecticut to win, and a lot of other people feel the same way. Sophia, if you want to get into our FanDuel plus minuses on this one.
I would love to. So right now, the FanDuel Sportsbook, and this is going in most likely to least likely winning the national championship in women's basketball this upcoming season. They have South Carolina first, UConn, UCLA, Texas, LSU, and then Notre Dame. So a lot of those standard programs that we're really used to hearing about, but I was honestly very surprised to see South Carolina is still the favorite to win the Natty this year, especially with that news coming out yesterday about Chloe Kitts, who's going to be out for the season with that torn ACL. And just with UConn, they are the reigning champions. Yes, you lose a Paige Bueckers generational talent, but you have a lot more talented players on the roster still. They had an exhibition game yesterday against Boston College. They won pretty comfortably, and exhibition games don't really show everything, but when you have a Sarah Strong who had 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists in 22 minutes, and AZ Fudd had 20 points in 23 minutes, that probably has you feeling pretty good heading into the season. So honestly, I would think that UConn should be the favorite right now.
And we mentioned it yesterday too. If Gino is smiling preseason, everyone's in trouble. If he is happy and participating and being okay with players making TikTok videos like post practice, before whatever it may have been, I just know they had their practice uniforms on and he was giggling a Kiki King. We're in trouble. Like, I genuinely, if Gino is that happy to begin the season, I think everybody is in trouble and he knows exactly what he has this season. But I agree with you. I think South Carolina is obviously always going to be a very dominant program, and they're going to want to get back to that winning bracket. But I do believe having Chloe Kitts as not only, her scoring ability defensively, but also just leadership on court, I think that is going to be a little bit of a blow to them this season. I do believe they will make a run probably as far as they did last year, but I think Connecticut has really good momentum to come in and win it again. But truthfully, I think UCLA could have a really good shot at winning this year as well, when we're thinking of, Lauren Betts entering her senior year. However, once you get late into these NCAA tournament games, once you're, hitting that Elite Eight, Final Four, Lauren Betts can't be your only option. That's the part I think that you started to see last year's NCAA tournament that I think kind of led them to, fall out earlier than they could, because I really did believe that they could have made it all the way to that championship game. So I'm very curious to see what that's going to look like for them this season, and who else can kind of get involved outside of Lauren Betts.
Exactly. Like you said, last year in that Final Four game or during that run, it was Lauren Betts in the paint and probably about four other opposing jerseys in the paint with her. That's just how gravitational of a player she is, because this is a very, very tall girl. She's very strong. There aren't a lot of players that single coverage can really guard her, so you got to bring in that help. But I'll be very interested to see what Gianna Neepkins does this year as well with UCLA. She's transferred from Utah. Last season, she averaged 19 points per game. And here's the important part: she is a career 44% 3-point shooter. And so, whenever you think of, okay, how are we going to open up the floor so that Lauren can go to work inside, you have shooters on the outside. And I think she can fall into that system perfectly because, again, you force a defender to think, am I going to go inside? And then it's just a kick out for the knockout, for a knockdown, or if she stays out, then that's more room to eat for Lauren. And with that UCLA team, with the addition of Gianna, they're going to have 8 seniors/grad students on that roster. And when you have all these players that are veterans and are probably at this point, again, after I would say 2 back-to-back seasons where they felt like they should have won a national championship, there can be a little bit of desperation there.
I think that experience is just so invaluable too, having a bunch of seniors and grad students on your roster who, again, are now all upperclassmen. And as you mentioned, have a couple of years of, understanding what it looks like being in this NCAA tournament. But, that goes to speak for basically all the teams, like a UConn, a South Carolina. These teams are very experienced on the big stage. So again, what UCLA will be capable of with the inclusion of some of these players, as well as you said, just the 8 seniors, grad students, those have to help. Texas as well, in those odds. Madison Booker, who last season as a sophomore averaged 16 points, had really great efficiency, 6 rebounds, and was the AP first team All-American with SEC Player of the Year honors. You're going to look to her to do that again this season. But who else do you think can help Texas out this year?
I would say the addition of Brea Cunningham. She's a transfer from Arizona. 6'4". We know how Vic Schaefer, head coach of the Longhorns, he loves a big. I mean, you look at
Everything's bigger in Texas.
Exactly. You look at the Kalani Browns of the WNBAs that were in that system. So he loves a big front court player, and I think she provides that. She's a really talented shot blocker and rebounder, and again, just fits well into that style of play that Vic Schaefer likes. And I think for Madison Booker, again, she's done some really great things and she has the accolades. It's just a matter of, okay, where's that national championship now? But SEC has a lot of talent again, so it's not going to be an easy path.
Exactly. And also when we're thinking of that LSU, Malaysia Fulwiley being able to come onto the squad coming from South Carolina. And then obviously you still have Flau'jae Johnson, who has just been such a well-rounded player for LSU as well. And I think she is somebody that really stands out to me just because I really love her style of play and she can really get going at any moment. I think she's another player that this LSU team is going to rely on heavily, especially when, you're thinking of the seniority aspect of things too. And I feel like she has put more of that leadership on herself as well. Just because, when we're looking at this LSU team a couple years back that won the national championship, there was also a lot of other players that she could kind of rely on where she was in a leadership role, but she kind of didn't have to be the forefront of it. When you have an Angel Reese on your team, you have an Anissa Morrow. I think this season they're going to look for her leadership a little bit more, and obviously just her scoring threat and ability and just her length as well. She's also a pretty big guard, and just provides a lot of versatility for them.
Definitely. I think when you look at the backcourt of LSU's between Flau'jae and Malaysia, that's probably the most highlightable backcourt in the NCAA. They both can go get their own buckets, which I mean, when you have options like that, is so useful. And for a player like Malaysia Fulwiley, who she kind of had a bit of a reduced role out South Carolina just because of the system and the way that Dawn Staley kind of coaches her players up. And I think she's ready to be let loose, honestly. And I think that in a system like LSU, where they do like some of that flashiness, she can definitely thrive. Because, I mean, I think everyone saw that video of her that went viral 2 years ago, where she did the behind the back inside lay. It was crazy. I think it was in Paris or something. But that's the exact type of spotlight I think that Full Wiley will see this season.
I agree. And as you mentioned, it's looking like a dangerous duo, but I think they're going to feed off of each other very well. And again, we know the WNBA just wrapped up, but it's truly never over. We're going to talk about free agency after this.
Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Thread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move. Whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors, this is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. If you're anything like me, where I'm a retired athlete, I guess you could say, sometimes you just need to be told what to do, and that's exactly what Peloton gives. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com.
Okay, WNBA free agency, which is going to be a really big topic when we're thinking of the 2026 season. We're thinking of the CBA negotiations, when we're thinking of Unrivaled, it all comes together within these next couple of months until the next WNBA season. But just for those of you that don't know, unrestricted free agent is a player that can enter into negotiations with any team during the free agency period without hindrance, that they can negotiate contracts starting on January 21st and on February 1st enter into a negotiated agreement. So when we're thinking of some standout ones that we'll start with the aces of some standout players who are technically going to be free agents, considering they're just coming off of their finals win. Jackie Young will be one of those players. Asia Wilson is one of those players as well. And Jewel Lloyd is also somebody else from the aces that are going to be in this within free agency, as well as Chelsea Gray. So basically the big three of the aces are technically going to be free agents this upcoming season. So we're going to talk a little bit about core players as well. And Sophia and I we're talking about this before. We're trying to absorb all this information with you guys, but a core player is an organization can at maximum core one veteran free agent. So a core qualifying offer is a fully guaranteed 1-year deal worth the supermax that both UFA and RFAs are eligible for. So, Sophia, who are some players who can and likely will be cored in free agency this upcoming WNBA season?
Starting with a team like the Aces, kind of the whole ideology behind coring players is that so you essentially have the negotiating rights with them. You see them as a franchise player. And so you can either use that core tag in a way that you definitely want this person, or if you're in a situation like the Aces where, say, your players like Jackie Young and Asia Wilson, Asia could be more likely to stay, so you want to core Jackie. So I think that's a player that can potentially be looked at towards. Another person I think that would be core would be Sabrina Ionescu for the New York Liberty. The Liberty, again, another team that just had a little bit of a disappointing season by their standards. And if they were to core a player like Sabrina, I think that indicates that they're really, keeping her, especially with her youth and her playmaking. They want her at the center front. Other players that could be mentioned in that core tagging would be Alicia Gray, Kelsey Mitchell, Gabby Williams for the Seattle Storm, which the Seattle Storm, they have a ton of free agents. So that's going to be an interesting one, especially they're a team that doesn't have a head coach right now either. And then Azurá Stevens as well for the Los Angeles Sparks. So it's just these general managers playing a little bit of a game, deciding if they are super certain that this player is going to return, or they're like, nope, we're just going to have the rights. Because again, if a player receives a core designation, that the team that designates them as such is the only team with which a player can sign or negotiate a contract during free agency period. But the team and player can still negotiate a move also if both parties desire. So we saw that case last season with Kelsey Plum and the Las Vegas Aces, where she was cored as a player, and because they still had her rights, they were then able to trade her to the Los Angeles Sparks in that 3-team trade to get Jewel Lloyd.
Yes. And some players who more than likely won't test the waters, even if they don't receive the core designation. Again, Asia Wilson, I believe she will be on the Aces for as long as she possibly can, maybe her entire career, because why leave? Napheesa Collier, another player who is the franchise player for the Lynx, more than likely will stay with the Lynx. Alyssa Thomas, face of the Mercury. Breanna Stewart, face of the Liberty. Kelsey Plum, who's kind of writing her own history with the Sparks right now, or has the possibility to do so. Obviously, still a fresh face with the Sparks. Had a pretty successful season towards the back end after All-Star break. So she has a young group that she's working with, but I think she can be the one to kind of lead the way for them. Will likely stay. Same with Dearica Hamby, who also kind of a face for the Sparks right now as well. And then Ryan Howard, who actually is a restricted free agent, but she will be in Atlanta. Some more notable free agents. Dejanay Carrington, who we will also probably likely see stay with the Lynx potentially. Tina Charles, actually kind of curious to see what Tina Charles will do. Natasha Howard, Kayla Thornton. Speak to us about Kayla Thornton, Sophia. Obviously, Miss Valkyries. What would you see from Kayla Thornton in this free agency?
Yeah, so I think one indication kind of right off the bat is that the Valkyries gave her a $20,000 off-season bonus to reward her for a limited time playing in the off-season. And to me, that's kind of an indication that they really see this player as their future, at least for the next season, because they want her fresh, especially coming off of a knee surgery, the season-ending injury. You want to make sure that she's properly rehabbed and ready to go. Another restricted free agent for the Valkyries that received that offseason bonus as well was Veronica Burton. So those are players that more than likely, because they did extend that formality a little bit and that money, of course, it's hard to see them leave, but there are so many unrestricted free agents.
Yes. Another one, Marina Mabry, who also kind of curious to see what her moves may look like, especially just when we're thinking about the sort of season that Connecticut had. Do you want to see it through and try to build? Obviously, alongside that conversation is Tina Charles, or will she make another move? But again, she just left the Chicago Sky as well, so we will see what she does there. I think another notable one, Natasha Cloud for the Liberty, who came in and had kind of her first honors within the Liberty, and kind of felt like this was the first time she was truly able to showcase her abilities. And then another one that hurts my heart, Ariel Atkins, who was on the Sky this season. I'm very curious to see what Ariel does, truthfully. Obviously, a disappointing season for the Sky, and disappointing to her standards, who has won a WNBA championship, who has won a gold medal. I could potentially see her maybe moving on from the Sky and maybe going somewhere that fits her a little better, and just, her style of play, and being able to build the players around her as well. And then there's still a long list to go, but another one that really stands out at me is Skylar Diggins when we're talking about the Seattle Storm. How do you view that, Sophia?
The Seattle Storm, throughout this whole last WNBA season, was always one of the most interesting teams in the W to me because you saw and you looked at their top end talent and you saw the way that they compete with the best in the league, and then sometimes the next night lose to the worst in the league. So very, very volatile. But again, they don't have a head coach right now. They have a lot of free agents. You talk about Skylar as the Magbigor and Neka Glumake, Gabby Williams. They're all in that group of free agents. So it'll be interesting to see if Seattle maybe takes just an entire rebuild approach because that was a little bit of an older team. But that is definitely going to be an interesting situation to play out. I think those two or those Seattle Storm players. And then for me, unrestricted free agent to watch out for would have to be Jonquel Jones. I think she dealt with a lot of injuries this past season. She won Finals MVP with the Liberty the season prior to this last one. So it will be interesting to see if she still wants to ride it out or is maybe ready for a new chapter.
Yeah, there's going to be some mix-ups in the WNBA for sure. First we have to go through the CBA agreements that are set to be hopefully done, but this is the deadline, October 31st, and then we'll likely see some movements after that. Obviously, January and February approaching in this winter, but make sure that you keep up with us. Me and Sophia, again, like I said, are pretty cool. We love to talk ball with you guys. Make sure to follow us on our social media, and we will see you all again tomorrow.